Welcome back to the work session of the Pickton County Commissioners on Tuesday, March 14th. I just want to say thank you to all the pie bakers. There were lots and lots of pie bakers. And Rich and I and Dan each tasted every pie.
43.
43 pies. So if you see us passed out in the hall, call an ambulance. And now we're moving on to, we're going to, for a moment, skip upcoming meeting items, review of future agendas until John Peacock joins us. So we're going to move into discussion, an open discussion, and this is going to be cooperating agency draft comments about the BLM Big Game Corridors Draft EIS. And is Ellen online?
She was in the building.
She's here. I don't think she's aware that she needs to come down this early.
Okay, we'll come back to that. We're going to move on to the Aspen Mountain Night Skiing Special Event Permit. I don't see Suzanne either.
She's out sick today.
She's what?
She was out sick today. I got an email from her.
So you're taking it?
Can we do it without her?
Sure.
Okay, let's do it.
Come on up.
Come on up, introduce yourselves.
And then you have to go up the stairs and at least eat 24 sample of 24 pies.
Do you want me to start? Okay.
Go ahead.
So
Introduce
we are hosting the second annual Kick Aspen Night Skiing event at Aspen Mountain on the 24th and 25th.
Can you introduce yourself for the
I'm
public?
sorry. I'm Joey Waltemath. I'm the Director of Event Operations for the Aspen Ski Company.
Thank you.
Darren Eshaw, event operations for the Aspen Skiing Company.
And Derek Gunshore, Managing Director for Events for the Aspen Skiing Company. And this is the second year that we've had night skiing in this format, but this is an event that we've had for over 20 years at the base of Aspen Mountain as part of our Spring Jam Festival. So it's a 2-decade-plus old event that we've done.
And this is the first time we've asked you to have a permit for it, correct?
Yeah,
You
it was
must love that.
a little bit of a surprise for us.
We did the city permit as we have in the past, and we were asked to do the county permit per the zoning, the nighttime use of Aspen Mountain. So that is what we're here to answer any questions that you might have.
Are you willing to finish all the pie upstairs as part of the deal?
We'll do whatever we need to do, I suppose.
You devoted to ski team. Okay. Is there anything we should know about this? I don't know about it very much. I have never attended it or been there and seen it. I was saying to Greg that I've skied down from Cloud 9 one year at night, but
I can give you some just quick details. The lift will run from 7 to 10 p.m. both nights.
Which lift?
The Little Nell chairlift. So it's just on the Nell run. We'll have around 25 lights lighting up the run for skiers. At the same time, we'll have a hi-fi concert, which is something that we've done there many times, which I can have Dara speak about.
Yeah, so the plan again this year is to coincide 2 nights of live music with the night skiing, and night skiing I believe is 6 to 10, correct?
Night skiing 7 to 10.
7 to 10.
both nights?
Yep. Music, well, it'll be the same stage we've done in years past in Gondola Plaza. The stage comes in Thursday night. Music will start between 6 and 6:30 with a local DJ, and then a headlining act will go on at 7:30 for roughly 90 minutes, and then we'll turn them off and put on a little bit of house music just for some ambiance with the night skiing. And Friday's band is a 8-piece fun band from Denver, and Saturday's band is a 4-piece from the UK actually. So.
Okay, sounds fun to me. Yeah.
Just to clarify, you're talking about March 24th and 25th.
Correct.
Yep. And we will do neighbor notices and make sure everyone is aware of, as we have in the past, everyone is aware of what we're doing and in case they have any questions or concerns.
And you'll have ski patrol on site?
We will have ski patrol on site at the top of the Nell Run, and they'll be on call. No need for any ambulance services or any other public services. No transportation issues, no bus, no requests like that at all.
Yeah, Patty?
So the bottom of Little Nell is all in the city. Where's the city-county line run through there?
That's a good question. I'm
So,
not.
reviewing the GIS, it looks like this county line is about halfway up the lift, the actual lift line, not the whole Little Nell Run, but about the lift line there.
So that is the reason why we need a county and city permit? Or, because we haven't had one in the
Great
past, so.
question.
Can somebody explain to me?
Great question.
All right, I guess I'll back up. Can somebody explain to me why now we've changed that and they need a permit?
Well, the reason that we're in here for approval is according to the ski rec master plan, the, any night use for anything other than sun deck and gondola requires further approval. So I'm just kind of cleaning it up
Okay.
with this approval.
So we should have probably been asking for this prior to, but we're asking for it now. Got it.
Are there any other questions? Yes,
Just,
Greg?
can you describe again the extent of the lighting, where it'll be, where the actual lights will be positioned and how far up they'll go?
There'll be lights all the way to the top of the chairlift, and most of them are on the skier's right-hand side, lighting up and across towards, so like basically lighting from east to west. There'll be a few, just for tramway code reasons, we don't have lights right next to the chairlift, so most of the lighting is going east to west, so, but they're in
And
various
those will be
locations.
just like little small towers on the side?
They're
or
like
10-foot
construction
towers?
light plants, yep.
Right.
Yep.
Got it. How many do you think you'll have?
We did 20 in the past, we're thinking 25 this year, just to light up any little dark spots. that
So
we
really,
have.
it's Little Nell is lit.
Yep.
I can see it from my house, and it's just like, you know, an event down the mountain. It's not a big
And the
deal.
lights are actually facing down, so
Right,
to light
right.
the,
On the
so they're not like up into space or into.
Right.
And-
Yeah.
I'm sorry, are you finished?
I'm good. Thanks.
Will you be serving alcohol outside at the base?
There will be a bar at the base, as we've had with the other hi-fi concerts, and it's being ran by our Environment Foundation, and we already did a liquor permit.
You got the permit for that?
We put in an application for it.
Awesome.
We'll have Citadel security on site, checking IDs and wristbanding and doing perimeter security.
And that is all within the city area, because that's all limited to Gondola Plaza. So it's
Okay.
kind of this dual jurisdiction. I think we got into it a little bit with World Cup too, so it would be great to clarify where and when we're needing to do both permits, and when one, this is that's a great explanation that, you know, this master planning piece has a nighttime event, and even though we haven't done it in the past, now it needs to be done. But I think there was some questions that came up as related to World Cup where we were doing 2 permits, and a little bit uncertain as to like who the jurisdiction was that was actually reviewing it. And in past, you know, back to 2017 World Cup finals, the discussions with the county were basically like, as long as the city is doing all permitting, the county was good for it. Because of the finish area, it's about 100 feet that
Inside
actually
the
is
city.
on the county, not in the city limits. It's pretty it's pretty small area.
See, the
So
fi-
Rich, you have notes about
sorry.
that, so we could need to clarify that for the SKICO?
Yeah.
So, and we actually didn't, for World Cup, just building permits were issued by the county. We didn't, special events just kind of went off with the city permit,
Right.
on that.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
But there were a couple others that we
Yeah, I think it'd just be nice to, if each entity has access to that permitting program, like how, you know, the software, how can we make it so it's one permit good for all things?
Yeah,
That would be
well,
nice.
we'll
Good
work
luck
on
with
that. Go ahead, Greg.
Ski rental, like, well, people showing up to ski, are they gonna be like people just saying, hey, this ought to be fun? I mean, it's not like the Torchlight Descent where you actually are kind of selecting and making sure people are competent and capable. Like, how is this gonna work?
I mean, I think people can rent skis if they'd like
Right,
to.
So the rental shops will be open and you'll
Yeah,
have
I
people
don't know.
come in.
the
Fort Mountain
hours,
Sports is
yeah.
open till 8, so they'll
They can do
just
that,
keep their
okay.
normal hours. You know, we've really geared this event since we it was previously a kind of invite-only competition where it was a big air, it was judged, and there was prize money. And we've transitioned this into a public component, and when we did it, it was really as a community thing. Last year was the first year we had public able to ski, and we did a $7.50 lift ticket in
Great.
honor of the 75th anniversary, and it was all done with the bar as a fundraiser for the Environment Foundation and our Community Cares Foundation, and we're going to do the same. And, you know, we've waited to meet with you guys to release any tickets just because we didn't know what the genesis of these questions and everything else were, but you know, we limited the number of tickets because the capacity is pretty small. And the way that we've done and released it, it was really focused on employees, locals, to get people out skiing and give them just something unique to come out and do and fun and really celebrate spring and the season.
Well, I apologize for the confusion in our communication about it. and it seems like it's set you back a little in your sales, but,
It's fine.
yeah, Steve, did you have?
I had one more, but Steve, go ahead.
No.
I was gonna ask, so the World Cup finish isn't even in Aspen, is it?
The
Finish line.
the line.
It's so far up Aspen Mountain now that they're not even skiing in Aspen in this race. I just wanted to point that out.
The
You
down.
want Picken County credit for this?
The down.
This should be, you know,
So,
You're
subtle.
correct. The
Too much sugar?
King County World Cup.
the Picken County World Cup is definitely how it will be
You know what,
named from
that's a
here on
great
out.
it's got a nice ring
Skiers
to it.
all flew into the Picken County Airport.
Go to the
If you
Picken
just
County
put
World
that
Cup.
nice big airplane turn in at the bottom, it could be the Aspen World Cup, just saying. Okay.
Steve?
So, a couple comments.
make a shirt.
One, I think it's entirely appropriate that you get a special event permit. I was in on, the negotiations with the ski company on their master plan. That's one of the things we discussed and decided was the right thing to do several years ago. I think that was just the renewal of it wasn't the original master plan, it was a renewal kind of a thing. Also, I'm perfectly fine with doing these, one-time kind of events with lighting up some of the mountain. I would be opposed to like night lighting like they do at Keystone every night.
As are we.
As are we. So don't worry.
Just because of Dark Skies initiative,
Yeah.
we need to have darker skies in the world than we have now, and so these kind of having it just once in a while, these kind of special events will make it unique and really exciting for people, I think. If it was every night, it'd become ho-hum and it would not be special anymore, but this will be special.
I grew up in Cincinnati, Ohio, and then I came out here to college, so I became a skier back in the day. And then I went back to Cincinnati, and they had a ski area outside of Columbus. Maybe the name will come to me, but had a lot of night skiing, and we thought, oh, that'll be fun. We'll do night skiing. It's really not fun at all.
Brandywine?
It's freezing cold, first of all.
And the light is very
And
different.
plus, the mountain in Ohio, as you can imagine, is about as tall as our administration building, and it really wasn't fun.
And yet, yes, totally agree, Steve. We've always done a special event permit for it. It's just always been handled through the City of Aspen Special Event Committee. So I think if we can just clarify who wants to be the jurisdiction that's going to handle the special event permit, we will certainly continue on that path and make sure we're doing it with whoever wants to do it. And preferably we do one, but if we have to do two, we can do two.
Yeah, we'll get that clarified.
That'd
How
be
many
great.
square feet are on one side? Yeah.
I think the cooperation between the city and the county is good enough that we can figure this out.
So do we need a motion on this, or can we just give a thumbs
Can't
up?
do a motion because we're.
Oh, it's Tuesday. So I'm giving a thumbs up. Anybody else? Thumbs up?
I'm okay with it because it's kind of cool.
I do feel like this is in the purview of ComDev. They just sometimes elevate them for our
Yeah,
review.
yeah. So, have fun.
All right.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
See you guys there.
What are the dates again?
24th and 25th.
Great, thank you.
Thanks,
And you all
guys.
recovered from World Cup?
Oh, yeah.
Oh.
We've clearly moved on.
That was a great event, by the way.
Thank you, guys. Good to see you.
There's stuff all over Coke Park.
Okay, so now we have Ellen to talk to us about the BLM Big Game Corridor.
Yes, apologies.
I know, I was just saying, are you at the meetings? I don't see you there. Are
Am I at
Keeping them there
you
for
just
most of
stay
them.
quiet in the background?
Oh, no, I think I missed one, but yes.
I think I missed one too.
Well, there are lots of cooperating agencies, so there are like 4
Yeah.
screens.
And then we have, our colleague over in Garfield who takes up quite a bit of the airtime, so not a lot left for us.
Airtime, screen time, room air.
Okay,
Right.
Ellen, tell us about it.
Okay, so we, as you know, we're working as a cooperating agency with BLM in the development of a Colorado Big Game Resource Management Plan amendment and environmental impact statement. And BLM has produced some draft alternatives for review by the cooperating agencies only. These are not public-facing yet. And they've asked for comments by close of business day today. It was a very quick turnaround. And so I just wanted to give you a quick update on where we are in the process of developing this plan amendment and EIS, and also check in with you before I submit comments at the end of the day. But it is important to note that the draft alternatives that they've created are preliminary only. They could change significantly before all is said and done. No preferred alternative has been identified yet. And so we're just really in the beginning of the process of review. And so to remind you, the scope of this amendment and environmental impact statement is to evaluate BLM planning decisions for oil and gas leasing with respect to protection management of big game, high priority habitat. And so that's what instigated all of this planning effort. Thank you. Forward. So when we talk about high priority habitat, the habitat that's under consideration here is for big game species, and the specific species identified excuse me, are bighorn sheep, elk, mule deer, and pronghorn. And the habitat, the high priority habitat includes production areas, migration corridors, winter concentration areas primarily. So this is just looking at big game species. And so really, BLM, we're at a stage where BLM is looking for feedback from cooperating agencies, but it's really not a matter of agencies identifying alternatives that we think are the right alternative. This is really looking at the whole document, the EIS document, and answering these specific questions. Is the range of alternatives reasonable? Are there any fatal flaws or missing components? Areas that need more clarity and the like. It's really just looking at the document as a whole and seeing if it works and communicates. So there are 4 alternatives, drafty alternatives provided. Alternative A, as is typical in any environmental impact statement, is a status quo, no change. Alternative B is really aligning BLM management decisions regarding leasing and permitting with the Colorado Oil and Gas Conservation Commission standards for permitting and leasing, well, for permitting. And I'm going to skip to alternative D, which I've highlighted here. This is the greatest conservation alternative, and it proposes, what's unique about this alternative is that it proposes closures to new leasing in high priority habitat areas identified with no known low or moderate oil and gas development potential. And this is significant for us because most of the land that has oil and gas potential in Pickens County is, and this isn't all of it, but the bulk of it is located in the Crystal River Valley, well, Crystal River area on the western periphery of the Crystal River. And a lot of that area is identified as low or moderate oil and gas development potential. So this alternative would definitely impact Pickens County in that it would probably, for future leasing, it would close those areas to potential for new leasing. So alternative D is the most, allows for the most conservation, and then alternative C is somewhat in the middle. It's a balance between conservation and resource use.
We have to choose one.
So what will happen, and I'll get to this in terms of the process moving forward, but these are just draft alternatives. Before all is said and done, BLM will may modify these alternatives. They may mix and match, combine alternatives, and then they will produce another document, and they're not quite sure when this will come out, for the cooperating agencies to review before it goes to the public. And we're going to massage it a little bit more from the cooperating agency standpoint and input and resource availability. And then they will produce a draft environmental impact statement and resource management plan amendment for public viewing and commenting. And at that point, we will, as a cooperating agency and just as a county, comment on the alternatives that they finally present. These are just draft. But yes, ultimately, we will be asked to let them know what we think is, out from our perspective, the best alternative for achieving the goals that they've set out to achieve.
And would we be just speaking for Pitkin County's lands, or would we be choosing an alternative that would cover all the lands? Because they're so different.
Well, I think, the scope of this effort is Colorado-wide. It's BLM across Colorado, so across all their field offices and districts. And we are just one of those, within one of those field office and districts. Clearly, I'd suggest that we make our decision based on what's best for Pitkin County, but I think it makes sense given that wildlife and oil and gas development is something that ultimately affects the whole state collectively, that we also be looking at it from the statewide perspective, because wildlife doesn't know jurisdictions, and oil and gas potential has impacts statewide, right? So, does that answer your question?
Yes.
Thank you. And so, the comments that I'm proposing to submit at the end of the day today are very brief, because again, they're not asking us to choose an alternative right now. They're really trying to decide whether the document works, whether it makes sense, communicates, and to respond to the questions that they asked us to specifically respond to. The first bullet here does say that, a reasonable range of management approaches have been identified to achieve the goals. They go from status quo to aligning with the COGCC standards, which they have been required to do, to balancing wildlife and oil and gas development, to this most conservative approach that I think is where we're going to land ultimately. So then specifically, there's some details within these alternatives that are, I have 15 minutes, so I'm not going to go into details, and it's BLM speak, so it's pretty dense. But I'm saying that we do support closing those low and moderate potential development areas in the high priority habitat areas that are identified. And we're going to most likely support implementation of the most restrictive stipulations. Those are typically things like no surface occupancy, controlled surface use, timing limitations, where they do issue a lease in an area where there's high potential for oil and gas development. And we're going to, I assume we will ultimately support implementation of what they're calling a 3% disturbance cap for surface disturbance, and that's looking at 3% of the high priority habitat area that is identified around a facility, within the vicinity of a facility. And then another stipulation that they're looking at, and this I think comes directly from Colorado Parks and Wildlife, is limiting facility density, and that's an oil and gas facility, well, and adjacent facilities, to 1 per square mile in this high priority habitat area. And that is spacing, it's a density issue, trying to accommodate spacing to make sure that it doesn't, it impacts this high priority habitat to the least extent possible.
I have a question about that one.
Okay.
So if we are going to spread them out, if they have an area where they've approved drilling or have whatever excavation means they're using, and they're gonna spread them out 1 square mile, that's a lot of roads to access them, which also have a negative effect on wildlife migration, and I'm just wondering, I'm sure they've looked at it closely, but it just seems like maybe if they clustered them, it could be less impactful, fewer roads. I don't know, I'm just
That's
wondering.
a good point.
Yeah, you know, they look at one of the things they look at in the environmental impact statement is cumulative impacts. And I know and I can't say that I have studied every line with great scrutiny in the draft proposal right now, but they do talk about access. And I'll have to look at that again to see how they weigh access with clustering.
The actual wells or whatever.
Right.
Uh-huh.
So I'll look at that and see. But
Okay, thank
they
you,
do
Ellen.
talk about, I think in the most restrictive alternative drafted to date, there is a push to, it's interesting, there's a push to cluster, and that may be just clustering all of the components of one facility
Yeah, right.
rather than spreading them out. But I think my guess is from a wildlife perspective, the density that's more spread out allows for better migration, and I don't know about production areas, but I think migration corridors and less fragmentation, I think, are two issues that are really a high priority. So, good question, and I'll look into it some more.
Thank
but,
you.
Yeah.
Greg?
I was just gonna say, the roads, that's what I think about as super. I think roads have significant impact, and what we're trying to address is about a 50% decline in our large ungulate herds, and I'm glad BLM is doing this, but I want to make sure the road networks are a huge part of this, and I guess it's probably in there. I just didn't really see it in the brief presentation, but I'm glad to hear you speak about it. And I don't know if we can make another checkpoint, bullet point, just to say that road networks are probably a very significant contributor to this impact, and I'd like to see them flesh that out more before they bring it back to us again.
And they may have
It may be there.
provided
They just
more
didn't share that.
detail.
Yeah.
That I'll look, and I will look into that. I think under the alternative D, the fact that they talk about closing future leasing to the low and moderate development potential areas for oil and gas development will definitely eliminate the need for roads. So that in and of itself is a good direction to take. But I'll scrutinize the draft more closely to see. I think there is more. I think that is addressed to a greater extent than I'm able to share today.
Right, because just to follow up on that, I think they probably have data on wildlife poaching and then also collisions with big trucks moving quickly, servicing oil field service trucks. I think they take a pretty big toll on elk and deer herds.
Yeah,
So-
they do actually talk about pinch areas, which are areas that get really narrow where everything comes together and wildlife are forced into one small area. And I assume some of those also have a component that relates to access, but.
Patty?
Yeah, so if they're gonna close off, which in alternative 4, which I think is a good one, no roads can go through those. Because see, then the impact, when you drive through those sections on I-70, you just see the roads everywhere, especially if you fly over it. So I think it would be important that when we're talking to close those areas off for drilling, or whatever extraction mode is used, the concern is roads going through those areas that would be closed off to service the areas with high potential for extraction. See what I'm saying? I don't want to be able to say, oh, we're going to just drive through this area that we're closing for drilling to get to an area we're going to drill, because then you're impacting the area you've closed.
I see.
See what I mean?
Yeah.
Because the roads are a huge impact.
And I assume I haven't read anything that says they would, if there are existing roads in those areas, that they might close to
I'm
future
saying new roads
leasing.
to access new drilling opportunities.
So new roads, it's a good question.
Should avoid those areas that we're closing for wildlife concerns, low to moderate sources of resources.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know.
Because if you're gonna close them and then you're gonna roads through them, what's the difference?
No, that's a good point, good issue to raise.
Can I add one more thing? Kelly, you've been raising your hand. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Kelly.
Okay, thank you. I guess this last bullet, 1 square mile is, I don't know, I'm just not sure that's a big enough unit in some of these areas, like some of these areas of BLM land that are like, really rural, really remote. 1 square mile to me can still be pretty high density for a high priority habitat area. And then I'm wondering, I think when we first started talking about this, we weren't sure what renewable energy leasing was going to play into this. And I wonder how that conversation has taken shape.
Oh,
My-
Yeah, I have,
Yeah.
I have a letter for you about the solar on BLM lands.
Okay, thanks.
They want to know if we want to be a cooperating agency for that.
Oh, okay.
mean,
I
give
was
it to
going
you.
to say, my understanding,
Know that about this.
Just came in.
I
Just
I
came.
just got it
No,
today.
that's fine.
and
No,
gave it to
that's,
you.
I'm
Just
just
came.
saying I wasn't trying to
okay.
lead this topic.
Well, that's more more than I knew. But I can say that as part of this environmental impact statement, they look at they're focusing on oil and gas development specifically, but they do a look at cumulative impacts. And I think so from that perspective, they do look at things like solar and other renewable energy resource development, but on the, sort of as a peripheral issue. I mean, they look at it as when they look at the overall impact in the area to wildlife. But it sounds as though they're going to do a separate EIS, environmental impact statement, to look specifically at how to deal with non-renewables. With renewable energy on BLM lands. And I know they also may do a separate look at recreation and those impacts on wildlife. And so, and that's something that we initially thought might be incorporated in this environmental impact statement, but it was just too much. And they said it's such a significant issue that we need to handle it separately.
Right, because I think we should be thinking about, I would think we would want to protect high priority habitat regardless of the use. But low production area for oil might be like high production area for solar, and so we may have different opinions about that.
And to answer your first question about one facility per square mile, I believe that is a recommendation that came from the Colorado Parks and Wildlife Agency, and I don't know how they came up with that equation, but I can find out whether, and I know that's been applied in other resource management plans elsewhere. I don't know if it's elsewhere out of the state or in specific resource management plans within the state, but that 1 per square mile, I think
I
was.
just wonder if that's getting us far enough, and if
Yeah.
CPW,
I'll ask.
is their mission, to maintain and retain and protect biodiversity overall? As we are faced with sort of, I think a real global crash in biodiversity.
You think? Yeah. And CPW is clearly one of the agencies that is involved in this process. And I'd like to know, it's a great question. I'd like to know how they came up with that
It seems,
ratio.
if I could, Francie, it seems to me that a lot of those questions could be answered if we look at the maps that are being created by the Natural Heritage Program with the wildlife corridors. And Pitkin County now in our watershed probably has the best in the state with our watershed biodiversity study. They've spent more time looking at scrutinizing our our watershed than any other part of the state. So we know the expertise is there, but honestly, shouldn't these roads in these areas be mapped according to the way the wildlife move historically? And might they be, if they are going to put a road into someplace, might they include wildlife crossings, whether it's overpasses, underpasses, or, you know, areas where wildlife can actually safely navigate a road? That should be part of the conversation, and it seems as if the state itself has the data to understand this. When you talk about the CPW suggesting, well, 1 per square mile is good, I was thinking, yeah, that's because they like having roads everywhere so their hunters don't have to get out and walk. You know, it's a resource. They look at it as a recreational resource, which is always kind of troubling for me, but they are, at least they have an interest in protecting wildlife so we can shoot them, right? So maybe more roads are good in their perspective. I don't know, but I think all the things we're talking about could partially be answered by looking at the migration corridors and including that. And I'm hoping BLM is including that in their surveys.
I believe they are.
Point of clarification.
Yeah.
Can I just, point of clarification, the roads that are built for oil and gas, are they public? They're not public roads. Aren't they restricted to oil and gas, service trucks, facility?
I think it depends. I think it depends on the lease. But typically, they're on BLM lands with public access. Some of them are gated. The Wolf Creek Storage Unit is in our county, and there are, once you get to wells that are
It's gated, but the road is.
Yeah, but the roads to access the wells are typically public
But that
BLM
road,
roads.
the road to Wolf Creek was already a public road. I'm
Right.
talking about the ones they run off of their leasing sites to get to and from, those little dirt narrow things. I mean, they wouldn't put overpasses or underpasses on those for wildlife, but I just didn't know how much public use they get. I think they're pretty restricted in some areas.
I think those offshoots, those roads that are directly accessing the well sites, if that's what you're talking about, those are typically gated, in my limited experience of being out there. And that's because they don't want people wandering into a well that's being constructed or flared or,
Unless you wanted to have a barbecue.
I'm sure there's some liability questions there.
Thank you. I don't know. Are you going to include? Do you have to resolve what to include in the comments then? Did we just make it more complicated?
No, I think I can add some of these questions, and they're good questions. Alternatives should be addressing the following, in addition to those that have already been addressed. Yeah, and as I said, this is the first crack at developing alternatives, and so here we are on schedule. Where that green star is. I stole BLM slides here. So this is the first draft. Cooperator review draft alternatives is there, and then BLM will take the comments that they get today and then revise the document and produce another draft for cooperator agency review before they publish anything for public review and comment. And they're anticipating that public review and comment draft for middle of August. And then their hope is that they'll have a record of decision, an approved amendment to their resource management plan sometime in October. So that's what they're looking at. It's a public process, and we all know those can sometimes
Be a little bit longer.
A little bit longer, but that's what they're hoping for. So we'll have another another chance as cooperating agencies to review the next iteration, and we'll see perhaps there'll be more relating to roads and the issues you've raised. So that's all I've got, I think, right? Yeah. Nope, don't need to go there. So, any other? Okay, well, great. Thank you. I appreciate your time. And
Thank you. Thanks for attending those meetings.
Sure, and we will, and I'll keep you in the loop. Well, the next iteration that comes our way, I'll get back in front of you. Thank you.
And
you.
that was just on my desk this morning.
Yeah.
Okay, well, okay.
Yeah.
We'll
Thank you,
figure
Jen.
this one out too. Thank you.
Thank you, Ellen. Okay, well, in this very long meeting that we have today, we are now at,
Open discussion.
do
Future
we have John
agendas.
yet? We don't.
Not yet.
Okay, let's go to future agendas. Do you have anything for us, Rich?
I do not. In the notes here, there's
send-
nothing printed, so.
Okay, well,
I have a few things.
okay.
I was hoping we could circle around as a group on next Tuesday to talk about the governor's land use policy. It's quite possible that something will be issued this week from their office related to the sweeping changes to local land use authorities as it relates to affordable housing and transportation-oriented development. So
Great.
I will bring notes that Kara, Suzanne, Ellen, and I about conversations we've had as they relate to Picken County. It's hard to have a really focused conversation at this point because we haven't seen anything, but we do have some policy principles that at least as a board we could work through, I think.
Okay.
On Tuesday, do we have time, this coming Tuesday?
That's what I'm asking for.
I don't know, do we have time? I don't know what the agenda looks like.
Yeah, I was gonna take a look and see. I don't think it's real big, but
And I'm all the way up to.
It's
And I can
important.
put together
This is a-
some
yeah.
information, as much or as little as you all want to work through, but CCI has put together a policy paper, CML has put together a policy paper, CC4CA has put together a policy paper. So
It's a pretty short meeting.
maybe 30 minutes or.
Yeah,
know-
I think we can fit it in, don't you, Rich? I mean, I
Yeah.
see just the, this is that funny thing again that we had before. To review the calendar of business for future board work sessions, and then it has these people for the different boards. So I'm not sure whether we're just talking about those people.
no,
We had
these are
this on
the,
before, and we didn't know really what it was then either.
Advisory boards.
these are your, let me see if I can find it here. These are your board reports. So
Oh, board reports.
each of you
They'll be
have,
reporting to us.
you're reporting to the rest of the board what's going on within those
No,
particular.
no, above that,
Oh, above that.
yeah. Jeffrey Woodruff, Amy
Those are
Barrow,
all
Renewals.
renewals for
Right.
citizen board.
but it
Right.
doesn't say that. It says calendar of business for future board work sessions. I don't-
Oh, yeah, that's what, those are just renewals for your
Those are
board.
interviews.
So we're,
Board
are they
interviews, yeah, they're
interviews, are they
interviews.
Are they
coming, or
interviews,
are we
or are they-
discussing them?
No, those are interviews.
Those are interviews because they have not been appointed that I can see here.
No, those are the boards that we choose to do interviews for people who are asking
Re-
for
Yeah.
renewals.
They're renewals, right?
We asked for that for open space and trails and
P&Z.
But I can tell you that we did pull the microgrid. That was set for an hour at 1 o'clock, so you
Oh,
do
you
have
did?
time. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, we met yesterday and talked that through. And we've got an RFP that's out on the battery, and we wanted to get back some more information because we want to come back to you about that conversation. But we felt it'd be better to get a little more information before we came back, instead of just a general update, so we pulled
Okay.
it.
I just got some really interesting information on a new battery that's not lithium ions. That,
Forward that to me, please. We,
I'll have my son
Good.
forward it to you. It
Okay.
came from him. He's using it, at George Stranahan's place.
uh-huh.
They're using it there, this whole new thing, so. we'll
Yeah,
see.
send it to me. It's part of the RFP is asking for alternatives.
Yeah,
So we
okay.
do have that stated in there.
Okay, I better make a note to myself.
Okay. But you do have time on the front end here.
Yeah, let's do it.
I'm gonna have 2
Yeah, go ahead.
And then I wanted to report back, so the CJCC wants to schedule a meeting with our board on the 25th of April, in the afternoon. And, we kind of honed in on that date because Chief Justice Boyd does his docket up here on those days, so he can come over in the afternoon when he's finished with his docket to meet with us. And
Seems
we're inviting
so
the
far
other members of the CJCC
On
I
the
think we
as
20
well.
April
I
25th.
think we even have that in our packet yet.
It's not on the future agendas in
No,
our
not
packet,
yet,
but
not far out. 26th is,
25th.
25th,
Fifth.
Tuesday work session.
got it.
It looks like for the first Wild and Scenic public kickoff to the stakeholder process is looking like April 27th. It's a Thursday evening in Marble. We're just waiting for confirmation that the firehouse there is available. But I think that will be the first date for that.
April 27th?
Yeah. And then I was gonna look to Rich, related to the discussion we had about calendaring a debrief with the sheriff, and the additional security
On the schools.
resources at the schools. I'm just received an email from the sheriff on a different train email thread about that, and he's saying that they don't need to come to the BOCC because they have some positions that they can kind of reallocate. So I don't know if that meeting is still gonna happen or not.
Okay.
I don't know
You're
if
talking
we
about
wanna
funding-
give
funding
direction
set-
for that.
funding
I think we still need a
FTEs.
debriefing on the event.
What was that for?
We wanted an
For an
event
additional,
debrief.
there was a request
Oh,
for
the school-
additional school resource officers, and we brought it here and said,
And
let's
a
have a
police
debrief.
station on campus and.
Let's have a debrief about what happens.
Yes,
You know, where
and
the
so-
sheriff best sees resources, but then I was on an email from the sheriff to community members that they can allocate more school resource officers to the schools without having to come to us.
Yes.
And so I don't know if that, in his mind, gets rid of the need for us to have a meeting, or if we still wanna
I still
have a
wanna have a
conversation
meeting.
about it.
I definitely wanna have a debrief on what happened.
And I think it should include not only the sheriff, but also the
school
school.
admin, I think
And
was the
maybe
direction
whoever
we
else was involved in the IMT response.
APD.
Because the evacuation thing was where the problems came up, and there were some communication, snafus that, I think a report on that, a debrief from all involved would be
Yeah.
something
So
the community
definitely
would
a
like
day
to
that
see.
John Peacock's gonna be here.
Yeah, he was, yeah, you bet.
And I'd also think that we should, just see what the sheriff's office is proposing, because technically, will they have the money in the budget next year or the year after? Do they
For
have the
the
resource?
SRF.
Yeah, I just, and just see how that works with the school and with the city of Bassman. I think that's important.
I think that's all I have.
It's a
for-
friendly debrief, I think it's really just, let's keep
Yeah,
it all
exactly.
in the loop.
Yeah. So on the 22nd of March, the Housing Summit Day, I was gonna come back here, but the meeting is even smaller than it had been on that day. So I'm wondering if I can just start the meeting from Zoom at the Meadows and not drive all the way back across town.
I will be here in the room, so if anything.
You will be here in the room? Okay, great.
Yeah.
So whatever you
That
need me
works.
to do,
Yeah.
I'm gonna be here in the room, and then I'm gonna stop by the meeting at the Meadows just on my way to Silverthorne.
So if you would start that meeting then on the 22nd,
No problem.
I'll zoom in with Greg. We'll
No
go,
problem.
we'll find somewhere, right, Greg, to zoom in. Are you gonna go to the Housing Summit on that day?
I'm planning on it.
Did you get a
Did you buy a
ticket?
ticket?
I
Or
have a ticket thing
Buy for free, but
on my desk that I haven't looked at it, I just saw in my big pile of mail.
you have a ticket on your desk?
I don't have a ticket on my desk.
I didn't get a ticket on my desk.
I think it's just a thing that there were
It
tickets
was a-
available.
It was a sheet that I didn't read yet, but it sounded like that was my ticket, but maybe.
Yeah, I think Charlotte was looking into those we can get with her after we're done here and find out for sure, but.
That would be
I just
great.
think
I mean, I
yeah.
went on that ridiculous Aspen tick thing where it costs nothing and you have to go through all the steps and they want your credit card, but I fortunately skipped that part, but.
Yeah, okay. Yeah,
We
we
can
can
have
check.
Steve carry the check.
Did Charlotte communicate with you about getting you a ticket? You had asked her to get you a ticket, I
I
thought?
thought I had one, but I haven't
No,
I
you
haven't
have
followed
to
up. I'm
get
just gonna
one.
show up over there.
I don't really.
What are they gonna do?
Will you find the answer? back to that?
Charlotte knows.
I
So we'll-
mean,
She
somewhere
knows we're
I should
going.
have a ticket, but I don't even know how to re-find it.
Yeah.
Because the communications
Well, we
about the
can
housing
sort that
summit
out.
have been
I think we're going.
not consistent, but anyway.
But just so I'm clear, you guys are gonna go, but you're going to zoom in for the meeting, find a
Correct.
place, location, and zoom in.
Right.
And I will be in the room to
You'll be
open the
here.
meeting with Grassroots.
Okay, all right. Is it all, are you part of
Kelly's,
the housing?
are you,
Yeah,
Yeah,
and I think
yeah.
my time is at 1.
Is it
my
1?
panel is at
Okay.
1 o'clock, so.
Okay, all right.
But that gives us 4 people, so,
Yeah, it'll be fine.
and there's
Okay.
almost nothing on the agenda. So.
Yeah, I was looking at,
I don't know.
And when we're done with this meeting, I'm gonna swing by, as I said, I'm not gonna get a ticket, I'm just gonna stand in the back of the room, see the audience and see what's going on, and then I've gotta head to Silverthorne.
Watch out for the bouncers if you come in without a ticket.
That's right.
I know how to get through the back door, through the kitchen. I'll bring a tray,
We'll just roll carts in.
yeah.
So, John said something about Tuesday's meeting having a discussion about the STRs in rural and remote.
He did say it was coming up.
I
on-
don't see it on here unless it's part of open board discussion.
that would be on the
He said that Tuesday next week.
21st.
21st, right?
21st. Okay, we can, we still have time to get that on. I believe he did say that. I thought I heard him say that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Is it rural
We
and
could do
remote?
that, in that hour that's allocated for the microgrid, because
Mhm.
yours won't take an hour, right?
So Francie, I'm getting a call from
I mean,
Ohio,
could.
maybe it's about that ski area that used to ski in.
And Kelly, yours, what would you
Taking
title
Complaining
yours?
offense at
about the
so-
negative publicity on a
Mm-hmm.
TV
You're telling-
broadcast.
Telling Francie the name of the ski
Statewide
area in
land
Columbus,
use.
Ohio.
Okay.
Affordable housing policy.
Maybe I should answer it.
Oh, this is about the housing thing. 2 tickets reserved, but I just want to make sure that's an accurate count to get the name. I don't know, is attending you? If you could send me that information about the.
Who's it from?
So
all
that's for
going at
you and
some
me,
point.
maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah, who's
Your
it
ticket in
from?
mind, maybe, or
I thought
Is that
so, but
from Charlotte?
no? This is from Sandy. This is Courtney. It's to Sandy. Sandy me. It's Courtney from the Habitat for Humanity.
Okay, well, let's check with Charlotte
But
upstairs.
there's a
'cause
phone
I-
number here. Shall I give it to you?
Yeah.
719-313-8380.
Okay.
I'm glad I saw that.
And the name again?
Courtney,
Courtney?
maybe. It's one of those written down
just
things.
tell her we're planning on coming.
So she says,
Can't imagine you guys not being able to get into
just
stuff.
giving you your registration for the housing come out on the 22nd. I'm saying is really badly done.
Written?
Is 2 tickets reserved, but we need one for Steve also, so whatever.
Okay, well, we'll have Charlotte try to get it straightened out for you.
Thank you.
This is the most organized event I think I've ever.
It's been a little bit serpentine. Okay, so I think we're done with future agendas. Anybody else?
The one thing I wanted to ask, Kelly, you mentioned CC4CA. I did get a text today from Brian. Said that on the list to be debated is a recent amendment to the bill that would adversely impact rural transit funding.
We could talk about that in open discussion if you want.
Oh, okay,
I said
okay.
CC4C
We can
because they
start
wrote a
open
policy
discussion.
paper on.
Right.
We
yeah.
can do open
Land use.
discussion, so
Okay.
go ahead.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's go.
Well, I think you had all received an email from Rachel Richards. I think we'd all received one via sending along
Yeah.
Club 20 reactions to an amendment to a bill. I'm going to forget the number. You might have it in front of you.
I do. House Bill 23-1101.
Yeah, I
Let me
saw
just
that
read
this
this.
morning.
So,
actually.
and what this amendment is proposing to do is change how the and Patty left, so it'll be helpful for her to participate. The transportation planning regions, how they are defined. And the amendment would propose that they be defined by population. Whereas I'm not sure how they're defined currently, but it's not by population. And from what I understand, there's some like pro and con arguments against this. What we heard, I think, via the Club 20 reaction is that this is really bad for rural Colorado because you know, it doesn't take into account the number of road miles that we have, which can be significant compared to more urban areas. And that we are all sort of competing for CDOT funding based on our transportation planning regions, and that this could really affect how much funding gets equitably dispersed across the state, is the big concern. And so that was Club 20's reaction: is no, we can't, you know, we can't change this because it's going to put us at a short, you know, put us at the short end of the negotiating stick. Whereas other arguments for doing it are that, you know, the TPRs are not being representative in the way that they could. It's time to revise and update these. And then separate from the merits of the conversation is some critique that it's been added as an amendment that's procedurally inappropriate for how legislation moves through the legislature, that the amendment is not closely tied enough to the bill for it to kind of retain its single topic status, and that's been flagged by Speaker McCluskey as, you know, saying like, yes, this could be an important topic to discuss. This is not the venue for that discussion. So that's what I know about the
What's the number again?
context of these
HB
conversations.
is HB, right?
1101, HB 23, 1101.
Yep.
And I think Brian has raised the same concern as our TPR lead has sort of raised the same concerns that Club 20 has raised. But I know we have other colleagues in other parts of the state that do really want to revise how the TPRs are created representationally.
When you say Brian, you're talking about Brian Pettit?
Brian Pettit.
Okay.
So that's what I know about that.
Dan Blankenship wrote a note to me on that because I sent it to him as well, and he thought the proposed amendment would be okay in terms of the questions posed by CC4CA supporting the bill with the amendment or supporting the bill without the amendment. He said it seems either way, it seems fine in RAFTA's view. If the bill moves forward without the TPR amendment, it will go to a conference committee and most likely come back when people are more familiar with it. Otherwise, it has some good things for transit, as in free transit service, and for RAFTA and other regional transportation authorities. So RAFTA seems a pretty...
Well,
okay.
and I think that was part of this. So the bill is the fare free days related to ozone
Right.
reduction goals. So that's the bill. The bill is to say, let's do these free fair days in order to help keep our ozone down.
To expand what we've done before.
And then this amendment, which you could see is not really directly related to that bill about transportation planning regions, was tagged on. So Patty, I don't know if you want to weigh in at all. Rich had brought up the amendment to one of the bills in the legislature, 1101, that would change how TPRs are defined. And I don't know
should
if
meet with
you
Brian and talk. Have you talked?
would- Yeah, well, and we had this, like Rachel sent out an email from Club 20 about their position, and then Brian agreed with that position. We're hearing from other colleagues around the state about why it would be a good thing to discuss, whether this amendment is appropriate to that bill, is
I'll touch.
related to that
How fast
issue,
is it
but-
moving? Where is it?
I think it's moving.
So do I have time to? I'll touch base with Brian tomorrow. I've got
Yeah, he
time.
texted me this morning, so.
Okay.
So I guess,
I'll
and
let him
Greg
know.
was
I
saying
need to
that
talk about something
RAFTA
else with
I
TPR.
sent it to Charlotte to
is
share.
fine either
Yeah.
way.
I'll put it in my phone to talk to him.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know.
I'll let you know if I come up with anything.
I guess I just would say, yeah, we want the ozone-free fare bill to go through, right? The ozone reduction-free fare bill to go through. And this amendment, you know, could be handled differently, is what I would think.
Yeah, I think RAFTA's pretty
Any
positive on
reactions
it.
to that?
Oh, I should send this to you
It's
also.
just, again, the difference is if transportation planning regions are defined by population, does that put our TPR, you know, does that put our county at risk for funding? Because we, you know, and
Because
the
the
argument
funding
has
comes
been
out
like,
of
yeah,
our
let's
TPR
redefine the
region.
TPRs, but find a balance between population and vehicle, you know, or road miles. That would help rural areas a little bit better. So
I'll have a look at it and read it again. I read through it quickly, but I didn't come up with anything. Anything more on that? All right, anything else for, board
I mean, can we
discussion?
just say our position is we'd prefer it not be amended at this point, but I don't know.
Let's take another look.
Yeah, I wanna look at it
And,
again.
Okay.
yeah, I sent that to Charlotte and Rich. You can disseminate it to,
Yeah.
Okay.
because
Thank
Dan
you.
Blankenship's comments are actually
Will
pretty.
you forward them to everybody?
Yeah, I sent them to Charlotte. She can send them out,
Okay.
or Rich can.
Any other open discussion?
I just wouldn't necessarily equate Dan, like RAFTA's interests as being completely aligned with
Right.
the TPRs.
Yeah.
What?
There was,
Let's see, there was something else I had. Yeah, go ahead.
I just heard this morning that Patricia Schroeder passed away. She was served as a representative in Congress for the Denver area for 24 years, and I met her during that time.
Right.
It was interesting that she was appointed, she was the first woman appointed to the, whatever the Defense Committee in the House. But they only gave her half a seat, and they gave a black guy the other half seat.
Wow.
Because neither one of them had ever been represented, women or blacks had never been represented on the Armed Services Committee. So I thought that was a little interesting tidbit of, trying to achieve more equity and representation by women and by minorities in Congress. But she was just really an outstanding legislator.
Oh my God, I love one of her quotes.
I wanted to
Can
comment.
you, oh, sorry.
I wanted to comment on a couple of deaths in our community this week. On Sunday, Julia Marshall was at Snowmass. She was skiing, and at lunch, our friends went out to ski another run, and she stayed in, and when they came back in, she was slumped over at her table, and she had died of a heart attack.
Julia.
Julia Marshall,
Oh.
she did, well, she's been very, very active lately, but she did all the landscaping at Tacaw and lots of stuff in Carbondale, and she's Thorne Warner's mom. I taught Thorne back in the day.
I taught
And,
Thorne in first and second grade.
Yeah, and David Warner's ex-wife, the architect David Warner. So that was a big loss. She was in her early 60s, I think. And then unfortunately, I have forgotten this woman's last name. I'm really sorry. But Annalise, who was at Yampa Mountain High School for the last several years, was my
Annalise Apple.
daughter's teaching partner for 5 years. And she was driving from No Name, strangely enough, to work at Yampa last week. And a rock came down, came through the windshield, and shattered the right side of her face and ended up in the back seat. And it's a long story, and I do know a lot of the details because of her relationship with Sierra. But they had her in the ER at Glenwood, and then they flew her to St. Mary's. And she was stable, and they were talking about starting to reconstruct her face. But she was in an induced coma all this time, so she was unconscious when they got to her at the site. Then she was in an induced coma, so she hasn't known, and she died on Thursday after another brain bleed. It was a really big loss for Yampa and for our teaching community. So
She's young.
she's probably 60. Yeah. So it was, and her mother Sally teaches at Yampa as well. So.
I worked for Tom Marshall and worked alongside Julia
Oh, really?
many years ago when she was just starting to get into landscape architecture.
Uh-huh.
Yeah,
She's a beautiful woman. Just a
yeah,
lovely
she was
person.
awesome. She was a good friend. Oh, I'm
Yeah.
sorry
So
to hear that.
both of those losses are significant losses for our community.
I might have to leave. Tommy's in the ER.
Oh.
I'm just waiting they just called me. He took a fall, and they took him by ambulance.
Oh.
Okay.
Hmm.
Gosh,
Well.
day took a turn. I do have one more open discussion item.
Okay.
A letter of support for EcoFlight.
It's right
on
here.
a grant. I had meant to like
Just
rewrite
thank you for
it
bringing that up.
and send it out to you all, and I forgot to
Here
do
it
that
is.
last night when I was baking pies.
At least you had your priorities straight.
I know, right? So, but it's due tomorrow.
Right.
So I would like to edit it a little bit for Francie's signature, but this grant organization has requested a letter of support from a local governing body. And given our collaboration with them, I thought we would be willing to do that. And if I can clean it up a little bit from us to, in their
Yeah,
support.
I'm willing to do it. There was another organization appealed to us as well, and I don't have it in front of me.
Yeah, I remember that, saw that
Do you
yesterday.
remember who it was?
I could look
We'll
and
have
see if I
it.
can
Another
find it real quick.
LOS, right? I think Charlotte sent it out as an LOS.
I think I put a star by that, so maybe I can find it.
While you're looking for that, this is the letter in, for
Oh, Ally Hager.
Oh, for the fire.
Sky Mountain Park. So this is the Sky Mountain Park letter.
Thanks,
You have a
Francie.
look at
You're
it.
really leaning into this chair a bit here. You're so organized.
That's all Charlotte.
They're both for the same foundation.
Oh, interesting. I didn't notice that. That's interesting.
I'd sign them both.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I certainly don't have any problem with fire mitigation and stuff
Goes back to wildlife mitigation.
in Greg's neighborhood. So you will get back to me with this shortly, or?
Yes,
Okay.
I will. Yeah, I'll get it to
Whooped into
Charlotte
shape.
to send for your signature.
Yeah, and you saw, I can't remember if you were on this thing about how the next round will be focusing on the county commissioners and the town council in Marlboro of their flights. That's gonna,
Oh, yeah.
of the Christopher flights. And, which is nice, that will coincide with going over to Gunnison. Okay, so I'll wait for you to get back to me on this. I'll sign this and get it to Charlotte. Now I'm not quite sure what we do without Patty for our retreat.
There was an interesting thing about the Sky Mountain Park. There was the brush grinding up operation they did there a few years ago, and the people in Brush Creek Village who were looking across at it were horrified when it was going on, apparently. And it was done because it was old oak brush that they were masticating, I guess, with the machine that they lowered down on it. And then it all turned green, and then you couldn't even see from Brush Creek Village that there was anything different. Ultimately, it all came back in with new growth and nice and green and good wildlife feed. So that was really for a different purpose than wildfire, but it really, I think, accomplished the same kind of thing.
We actually have a plan in my neighborhood in Brush Creek to bring probably the same guys, Mike Unkefer, who does that mastication and, fire mitigation. And our neighborhood organized just within Brush Creek to have him come and do the hillsides beneath our homes and surrounding, just to thin things out. They don't denude the place, but they do maybe 50% in places.
Some
Just-
places they do a lot more, like in
Yeah.
Swiss Village, they
This is
did
like
a
50%.
lot, yeah.
Yeah.
Brian Ferris did the one, Dorothea's son,
Okay.
did the one up by Swiss Village.
Got it. So that's, so we'll see what happens regarding that, but hey, it's fire mitigation, it's an important thing.
So I just wrote to John to tell him that Tommy had fallen and Patty had gone to the hospital and asking him if we should proceed with the retreat. So I guess we should take a,
Did she actually leave, or is she just going to check?
Yeah, I think
I
she
had the sense that she was leaving.
Okay. Patty and I attended the Aspen Fly Right event last night, which was pretty well attended. It was kind of a recap of everything that they've been doing so far in a presentation. Michael Kinsley moderated it. Jackie Francis was on the panel with Amory. And Dr. Tom Kurt was recognized also because he was talking about air quality monitoring and health issues. I thought there was a lot of valuable information. As I told Rich, a lot of it is not new to us, but it's being presented again to an audience that's very receptive and I don't see a downside to that. But I didn't speak during the session, only because I didn't want to. I think I'd rather not. I think we already have a public process, however flawed or good it is. And this was a second public process initiated that just seemed to me to be useful but also confusing to people. And the way Amory presents, he makes it sound like a new revelation, which gets everybody very excited. A lot of it, honestly, isn't breaking a lot of new ground. I can say to his credit, he's an incredibly thorough researcher and he does a lot of work, and there's some value to some of it. So I don't know who needs to review that or should on staff or with the airport, but it should be reviewed. I know there were people there from all the FBO, or at least two, I think, of the FBO candidates, and probably all of them. I just don't know who they are. And a lot of other people in town were there just to listen. And I think the newspaper article sums it up pretty well. What the point is that he's getting at.
I didn't read it. How would you sum that up?
Well, I don't want to leave anything out, but I think he's advocating that we take a pause, and that the pause needs to probably be longer than it is, because the airline fleet mix and industry is changing so rapidly that, in another decade, arguably there are going to be long-range electric and hydrogen aircraft actually working that could handle Aspen to Denver. He predicts they'll be in service. I think there's a lot of argument in the industry, or at least difference of opinion in the industry of how soon that will happen.
The paper quoted him as saying in 5 years.
Right, yeah, he said it 3 to 5 years in the earlier meeting, and I talked to him about that, because he made it sound like it's imminent, and it's not. None of these airplanes have even been built yet. They're not going to be here in 3 to 5 years or permitted. Things might be moving very rapidly. We'll have to see. But so I think that,
and is that
it's worth examining. The other argument, take a pause because we may have a much different scenario sooner than we think. In a few years. The other question, of course, is he's strongly advocating that, not stepping out of my lane because I'm not part of the decision, but that the FBO ought to be managed by the county.
Right. He also said, if you don't mind my adding this,
sure,
that with the new airplane designs, that we won't need this big runway. And so why are we designing this for something that won't even be built? No, wait, let's see. That the new airplanes will be here before we even start building this, was what I read in the paper.
Does so does that mean take a pause on the terminal, take a pause on
I think he was saying let's not rush
through town
on the airside improvements. He was saying let's not rush on the airside improvements. Of course, they'd like us to rush in getting the terminal done.
Yeah.
And,
well, that's what I just mean.
Yeah.
It's. I just keep trying to say, like, there's so much consensus around all these other major things related to the airport, even if, this other.
Right. The newest.
And I guess I
information.
just wonder too, like, does that mean people who own planes aren't going to fly those in anymore?
No,
does that
he
mean
said,
like people
he was
who own their
asked,
personal planes don't want to fly them 20 years from now? Like,
he said that even though he thinks the industry's going to go to these new airplanes, he can't guarantee. This read out paper. That's I don't know anything. I'm just telling you what the paper said.
And
he said that he can't guarantee that the private jet owners will switch over to the newer and better airplanes.
Well, yeah, because I'll report out a little bit just on my recent tour at the air traffic control tower, which was so interesting. These guys are very smart and they're super attuned to new and old technology, and I think one of my takeaways from that was like, they're like, yeah, like there's equipment out there that some of these newer planes can be equipped with, and some of the new owners will equip their planes with. But the FAA is not going to force them to have it.
Right.
And we can't get rid of our older systems until there's this sort of tipping point of uptake on the technology. So they're like, you know, I mean, they have systems that they update by floppy disk
I
that
suppose
they can't get
that's
rid
what-
of because they're like, we still have planes that are using these
Right.
systems and using this
Yes.
configuration and
And I think that's
Yeah.
Biden's excuse for approving the thing in the Arctic. But we still need to depend on oil and gas, and so even though I said there'd be no more oil and gas exploration
Well,
on
I'm not talking
federal
about
land.
that. I'm talking
Well, it's
about,
the same argument.
know.
It's the same argument, that we can't retire the old system until we are more fully in the new one. So it's the same thing with oil and gas as it is for the older airplanes. Like, how long is the transition period between the airplanes we have now
right, but we
and the new
can't
ones?
retire them anyway.
Yeah.
Like Picken County, like
Yeah,
that
that's
is
not
not
our
in our
jurisdiction,
sphere of
right.
authority,
Right, right.
So as far as like the reality of,
Yeah.
you know, yes, all these things may come, but are they replacing everything else?
Or in how long will they replace
Right.
it? Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, so that was just an
Right.
example of one of my takeaways from that.
The other thing he
Conversation.
discussed was,
You know.
noise measurement and air quality measurement, which, the argument is that the county really hasn't taken those seriously enough, and I find myself willing to hear that. I'm not sure I agree entirely, but, we've talked about air quality monitoring around to really get a solid picture, and I don't know if we could have done more or not. But what he's saying is the pollutants coming from these aircraft actually are much more dangerous than than the EPA even understands. That's his argument. So he's arguing for a national environmental policy that accounts for PM.1 and things that we're not required to measure by EPA standards, yet might actually be harmful.
Didn't he
So-
talk too about how a lot of the pollutants at the base of buttermilk are from the traffic?
Well, it's a mix. It's,
Yeah.
they can't tell which is which, as he said. And by measuring the pulses, knowing when planes are taking off, they might actually be able to quantify that at some point. But
Yeah.
they don't have the data yet, so there's a little bit of conjecture.
Mm-hmm.
The problem is people are willing to listen to everything Amory says because he's recognized as the genius in the field, right? And he has such high stature. But you still need to go in through it and parse all these pieces of information, because he'll say things that are kind of contradictory. And I want to make sure people are paying attention enough and not just taking it for granted because he's making a pitch for something, that they need to go and actually look at the data and understand it, and so do we. So,
And, I can update you on where the board's at, your advisory board, on the criteria pollutants. I mean, they're looking at a policy now that is going to add monitoring on the airport property in probably 4 different locations is what they're looking at. And then I'm gonna work with Karen, we're gonna pull together other partners with the city and the county that does the monitoring across the highway there, and see if we can line up the monitoring where it's taking place so that we can start to determine a little bit about what may be coming off the airport and is traffic
Great.
pollutants. The advisory board is in the thick of rewriting policies and really trying to strengthen things. And so I just wanted to let
they're
you all
covering
know that they are looking at
Great.
this at every angle. It takes us a while. You
Right.
you can't just do this stuff overnight. So we're working at it. We've got
having-
great people on it. We're tackling the noise. Valerie and Bruce Gordon are taking that on. So they're looking at strengthening our noise ordinances. So this board is actively engaged in it.
Right.
Yeah.
and
They're headed there.
if I could add, Jackie did an excellent job.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to hear
I
about.
think she started from a position of, disadvantage, actually, the way Kinsley introduced her. But she really did express that the
Good.
board has been working on. She did an excellent job representing the advisory board, the vision committee, because really the impression one could take away from that is that nobody's really done anything, when in fact we have over 100 plus, as I said in the paper, people in the vision and then the advisory board have been dug into this for months, if not years.
Right.
And so I think that, anyway, I was proud that Jackie was there. I'm glad they included her. she had to introduce herself for some reason,
Oh, my gosh.
which I was a little upset about, but she did a great job, so.
And Patty said that Amory spoke for quite a while without including anybody else, just talking before Jackie. So it wasn't really a panel, it was like Amory and then Jackie, is that how it went?
Kind of, there was some back and forth also.
there was?
Yeah, and questions and answers, yeah.
Well, that's good.
So I was thinking about our airport advisory board when you were just talking. And I'd been wondering what Jackie's role was, because I saw she was included in the program, but to me, it's the airport advisory board who's gonna make recommendations to us. It's not the Amory Lovins group. I think that their recommendations should be funneled through the airport advisory board. They should do their whole presentation to a full airport advisory board that we could all be invited to. I think the venue, having it in the Dunaway room at the library was probably, better space, a bigger space than having it in something in the Explorer bookstore, which is a tiny space, but I'd rather that they work through, make recommendations to the airport advisory board, who then recommends to us. Would be my personal preference. Not that the ideas that Amory's bringing up, I think, are important ones. I don't think he's brought up anything that I wasn't aware of when we started this whole process, really.
Right.
It's not new information at all.
Some of it goes back 5 years or 6 years or more.
Yeah.
That's a great suggestion. I appreciate that suggestion, because I think it would be useful, one, just so the community understands that we are talking to and listening to everybody, and through the advisory board would be the way to do it, in my opinion. And I know Amory has been invited by the advisory board to speak to them, and we can encourage that to happen. And then if he wants to do separate events, he's welcome to, right?
I think he's been encouraged to. I don't think the board said they wanted to dedicate the time. They're trying to figure out how to integrate this in, because there's been requests to have Emory show up, and the board members are saying, well, if it's on a specific topic, that'd be fine.
Right.
But if it's just general on everything, they've got a lot of work in front of them. They're trying to
Right.
really sort through it.
And,
But
and if they've covered the ground
they're
already.
anxious, yeah.
I think at the end of the day, it will have elevated and improved the public outreach and communication, and the quality of the outcome, I think, will be improved ultimately. And we can thank Amory and for his ability to get public attention for that.
So something.
I have a little bit of a different, I would appreciate the input if it was more focused. Like, I really would love the leading statements to be, our community is all behind a new terminal, a new transportation hub, like these improvements to electrifying our airport, and then focusing on where we have disparity. Because I just fear that we're not presenting that in a committed light as a community, and that we're gonna struggle to position ourselves for funding for those things.
If we
So I
appear to
would
be-
hate dissension on an important but singular topic to take away from all of the other positive community benefit where there is consensus.
I agree.
So that's just my qualifier as far as how we all engage, on the dissension. Like, I'm happy to engage on the dissension. I fear it's distracting from the consensus. So, that's my.
And, we are bringing in John Bauer from the FAA has agreed to come sit at the table with you all in the AEB in a Q&A session.
Do we have a
a
date
date?
on that yet?
Yeah, we're still working to get that nailed down. It has to be before the middle of April, because I think he's taken some time off. So we'll try to do that. And it may be just a special
good.
meeting night. We just try to pick a day that works outside.
Well, we have
the
a
room.
large enough block of time with him, so we
Yeah,
can
yeah.
answer community questions, things like that.
Well, it's going to be set up, it's not going to be an open forum. I mean, it's going to be probably the chair of this board and the chair of the advisory board will have a list of questions, and then
Right.
certainly you all can ask. But
Submit.
it's not set up, and we've been very clear about that. It's not a public forum, because I don't think that's fair to him as well. But I can tell you, though, that we have scoured the essays. We've come up with a bunch of questions. We have asked them to include in questions. We have a website. People can put questions in.
Great,
So we are
great.
doing it that
And
way. but
Jackie announced
it
that.
needs to be controlled.
Jackie announced that yesterday.
okay,
also,
good,
That
good.
that people could submit questions,
Yeah.
and she invited everyone multiple times.
Yeah, yeah,
So,
yeah. I mean, it's a great opportunity to clear up, just different interpretations of things, of how we're viewing them, and having
Right.
our ADO, our John Bowers, who everything goes through, is through him, to come and do that. And I'm just thrilled that he's willing to come and sit in a room like this and have what could be some pretty tough conversations.
I'm super excited that that's gonna happen. I can't wait.
Can I raise a related topic? I've been thinking a lot about the FAA reauthorization process.
I'm sorry, what was that?
The FAA reauthorization
Oh, okay.
process, which is legislation that kind of reauthorizes the FAA authorities. And, I just wonder if that's an opportunity for us to advocate on some of the things that we would like to see for our airport that we know are more in the FAA's purview. Like a carbon fee is like really what comes to mind first for me. And, whether we should find out if that's the appropriate process to sort of advocate for the ability to do something like that at our airport. Since the time
I've been
is now.
thinking the same thing in terms of the prioritization of landing at the airport. Because I would love to have a regularly scheduled commercial flight. When they get here, they get to land right away and don't have to circle around 2 hours and go to Hayden to get more fuel, which has happened before. Just because there's so many private airplanes that are being supported by tax subsidies by taxpayers. And if we could get that permitted at our airport through the congressional legislation on the FAA approval, I think we should try to do that.
Yeah, I just wanted to throw that out there. I don't know what that looks like. And, I don't know if our congressional reps would know what that looks like, but I'm happy to reach out.
Maybe lobbyists.
Ask.
Lobbyists might, right.
Yeah. Or if any of our board has made contacts with other airports that have had similar issues. It's been a long time, but I've talked with Teton County commissioners about some things, and I know Patty, I think, knows some people from Orange County Airport, and I just don't know. I thought I'd check in with you guys. If you
I have
any-
not had any conversations with other airports or jurisdictions.
Anyone? No? Okay. Okay, thanks.
Any other business? Well, let's adjourn, and I'm still trying to track down John.
Yeah, I've
I
texted him
think we
too
have
and
to
haven't heard
wait.
anything. I hope
Yeah,
things are-
me either.
everything's okay.
I don't know whether he's gonna want to reschedule, given his particular arrival time. We were supposed to start 15 minutes ago, and Patty not being here, so I guess we just hang out for a little bit, and so we are adjourned. Thank you, Grassroots.
Thank you.